Welcome to NTD News Today.
Here are our top stories.
Did the Biden administration pressure social media companies to censor content? The Supreme Court will decide in a high-profile case about free speech.
Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis could be facing a gag order in former President Donald Trump's Georgia case. Why the judge on the case says it's possible.
Idaho is closer to banning the use of public funds for cross-sex procedures. More about the expected vote and who it would affect.
A global artificial intelligence conference is on the horizon. What we'll see at Nvidia GTC this year, as analysts eagerly await updates on new products.
Russian President Vladimir Putin declaring a landslide victory for another 6 years in power. What critics are saying about the election, plus what Putin says about Western countries putting troops in Ukraine.
A volcano in Iceland erupting for the fourth time since December, triggering evacuations and fears of damage to infrastructure. We have the latest.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
Hi, I'm David Lamb, sitting in for Chris Beers.
And to begin the show, former President Trump was in Ohio over the weekend.
The presumptive nominee campaigned there for Bernie Moreno ahead of the state's GOP Senate primary and focused heavily on his own upcoming rematch against President Biden.
With his nomination secured, former President Trump is now focusing on November's general election. Trump told supporters in Dayton, Ohio Saturday, if he loses, he doesn't think the country will have another meaningful election. He lamented the economy under President Biden and said another 4 years would deeply damage the country.
Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country.
The Trump campaign later clarified the comment came amid discussion about the U.S. auto industry. Biden's campaign spokesperson condemned Trump's, quote, extremism, his thirst for revenge, and his threats of political violence. A rematch with Biden is likely to be extremely close. A Reuters Ipsos poll last week found the two candidates in a statistical tie with registered voters. Trump also appealed to Black and Hispanic voters, who will play a decisive role in November. Trump has been narrowing the gap with Biden in opinion polls with non-white voters, who formed a core part of Biden's winning coalition in 2020. Ahead of the GOP Senate primary in Ohio this Tuesday, Trump once again expressed his support of Bernie Moreno, calling him an America First champion.
Bernie is a political outsider who has spent his entire life building up Ohio communities. He's highly respected all over the country, and he's going to be a warrior in Washington.
Moreno will face Secretary of State Frank LaRose and State Senator Matt Dolan. Trump took a dig at Dolan, whose family owns the Cleveland Guardians, saying he's a victim of woke left lunatics for renaming the Major League Baseball team in 2021. Meanwhile in Washington, former Vice President Mike Pence said he would not endorse his former boss. He told Fox News on Friday his decision should come as no surprise. Pence said Trump is campaigning on a platform at odds with the conservative agenda they governed with during their 4 years in office. Pence publicly broke with Trump after the Capitol breach on January 6, 2021. He said his life was put in danger that day and later urged Republican primary voters not to choose Trump as their White House candidate. But Pence said he respects fellow Republicans who plan on voting for Trump.
And tomorrow night, NTD's Steve Lance and Tiffany Meyer take a deep dive into this election's most pressing issues. As voters cast their ballots across the country for their nominee, catch all the action and results live on Tuesday, March 19th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on NTD News.
Supreme Court is hearing arguments in a high-profile case about free speech and government censorship on social media.
The justices will decide whether the Biden administration illegally pressured social media companies to censor content.
Here's part of the government side's opening arguments.
The government may not use coercive threats to suppress speech, but it is entitled to speak for itself by informing, persuading, or criticizing private speakers. Like Bantam Books, this case should be about that fundamental distinction between persuasion and coercion. But unlike Bantam and the case that you'll hear next, this is not a typical suit where a speaker challenges government actions affecting its own speech. Instead, 2 states and 5 individuals are trying to use the Article III courts to audit all of the executive branch's communications with and about social media platforms.
The case, Murthy versus Missouri, alleges that the Biden administration ran a censorship by proxy campaign. It says officials have pressured social media companies to take down posts or suspend accounts over certain content.
Specifically, these allegedly censored posts related to the COVID-19 pandemic, the lab leak theory, the safety and efficacy of COVID vaccines, the 2020 election, and Hunter Biden's laptop.
Two lower courts found that the Biden administration ran a coordinated campaign to suppress disfavored views on social media. And the judges granted a temporary injunction blocking the government from continuing to do so.
The Biden administration is appealing this case to the Supreme Court. They are arguing that government speech crosses the line into coercion only if there's a threat of adverse government action, and that in this case, there were no threats.
Joining us now to discuss is Pacific Legal's senior attorney, Mark Miller. Mark, welcome. Good to see you. To begin with, could you briefly lay out the arguments on both sides?
Yeah, good morning, Steph. This case is being argued right now as we speak this morning, and it is about coercion and the First Amendment versus government influence and persuasion. And effectively, what you have is you have the government effectively admitting that they did suggest to Facebook and to X that tweets or Facebook posts should be taken down, usually involved with, as you just reported, vaccines or election issues in 2020. But they say we didn't force them to do it. We didn't compel them to do it. We just sort of made a suggestion. The plaintiffs in the case, which are Louisiana and Missouri, and more importantly, 5 individuals who actually had their posts taken down or their tweets taken down, are saying, no. Those companies knew if they didn't do what you wanted, that you would follow through with government consequences for them. The government doesn't have to say it, what the plaintiffs said.
And so, Mark, which way do you think the Supreme Court is likely to decide, and why?
Well, what was interesting this morning and listening to the oral arguments is that you do hear the justices on both sides of it. For the government's side of it, the best argument the government has basically is, look, we do have to be able to talk to the social media companies. We do need to be able to bat around ideas with them that, hey, maybe China is trying to interfere with our elections. We should be allowed to tell the social media companies that so that they can be on the lookout. At the same time, the government shouldn't be the arbiter of truth. The government shouldn't be the one saying, yeah, this vaccination news is not true, and this is true. We all saw in 2020 and 2021 the government wanted to tell us what we should take or what we had to take with vaccinations. Other people didn't want to take it. And really, shouldn't that be up to the individual? And the government shouldn't be putting one hand on the scales to try and force us to do things using the media companies as a proxy.
And so what do you think would be the broader implications of this ruling, especially in an election year?
Well, certainly the broader implications, and you can turn this around. You can say certainly if there is China interference or Russian interference with our social media posts, such that they're trying to affect the outcome of the election, you can see why a Republican administration or a Democrat administration would want to make sure social media companies know that. I think the justices will recognize that that is a risk that applies to both sides, but at the same time, the government needs to be very careful when it talks to companies about what they force them to do versus what is just actually communications between a private business and the government, which shouldn't be illegal.
And so how do you think this will also affect other cases that are before the court at the moment? Especially there are some cases regarding social media and the government, not just this one.
Yeah, so just a few weeks ago, we had 2 different states before the court, Texas and Florida, arguing that they should be able to tell the social media companies what they have to post, that if they allow one side of a topic, they have to allow the other. And so what's interesting is you have 4 different states, 2 states in this case today, arguing that federal government shouldn't be able to tell Meta or X what they're supposed to put on their social media posts or take down. But you have Texas and Florida arguing that, well, we can kind of do that. The states can do that. I think what you're going to see with this Supreme Court, this is a very First Amendment, free speech centric court. And I think they're going to work overtime to get some sort of 9-0 or at least close to 9-0 decision that says the free speech of Americans is paramount and the government shouldn't be interfering with private business.
All right. Lastly, Mark, what do you think people should be watching for in these cases? What's the next
I think
thing?
you could watch for the humor sometimes, and also that the justices are trying to work hard to show that even if they are have different perspectives or on different sides of the political aisle, they were appointed by a Republican or a Democrat, that they can work together. They're trying to make the court an example of what our government should do, which is work together for the good of the country and not be at each other's throats. Justice Sotomayor and Amy Coney Barrett had a public presentation last week and made that point. Both of them did. And I think you'll see the justices try very hard to do that in their opinions, both on this case and really all their cases.
An important point there, especially in what some are considering a very divisive time. So great to hear that point. Thank you so much, Mark Miller, Senior Attorney at Pacific Legal. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Steph.
And charter flight carrying more than 30 U.S. citizens fleeing violence in Haiti landed in Miami yesterday. Haiti's main airport in its capital, Port-au-Prince, remains closed following attacks by gangs in recent weeks. The U.S. State Department announced on Saturday it would offer limited charter flights from the less chaotic north of the country.
Officials said they could not provide ground transportation to the north and that U.S. citizens should consider traveling there only if they think they can reach there safely. The State Department said government officials in Miami are helping evacuees determine their next steps.
Last week, the U.S. dispatched additional troops to the U.S. Embassy in Haiti after the area fell into the control of gangs.
Aid groups say some 1.4 million Haitians are on the verge of famine.
Coming up, why an NYPD source says the subway system is the Wild West and how politics could be skewing the crime numbers. We have that and more after this break.
Uber is agreeing to pay nearly $180 million to Australian taxi drivers. Find out more about the end of this long-running class action lawsuit involving 8,000 drivers.
According to Marx, everything must be seen through the lens of oppressor and oppressed. Our property rights have continued to get weaker. The threat of these takings is no longer just for public use, but also for better use. This means that the government can't force the exchange of property from one private citizen to another private citizen. This is nowhere near the Founding Fathers' intentions. We now have a record share of Americans that have never been married, I being one of them. In fact, the median age of a first marriage has never been higher. Now you may be thinking this is only affecting single adults. Well, not exactly. According to Pew Research, 1 in 4 parents living with their child are unmarried. And let's take a look at how many children are currently living with either one parent or no parent.
Tangazo hili linahusu njaa. Tarajia kuona watoto wakiwa na njaa katika maeneo haya. Mambo yalikuwa bora kwa miaka mingi. Tuliweza kupigana na njaa na watoto wachache walikufa. Lakini sasa mambo yamebadilika na kwa mabaya zaidi. Hii ni kwa sababu wakati huu ukame umeangamiza zaidi.
Через війни та конфлікти ми мусимо залишати наші домівки і всі наші речі. Ми навіть не маємо їжі. Тому нам потрібна ваша допомога.
Millions of children are fighting to survive due to inequality, conflict, poverty, and the climate crisis. Save the Children is working alongside communities to provide a better life for children. And there's a way you can help. Please call or go online to give just $10 a month. Only 33 cents a day. We urgently need 1,000 new monthly donors in the next 30 days to help the children we support around the world. You can help provide food, medicine, care, and protection, plus so much more that a child needs, by calling right now and giving just $10 a month.
Ви можете допомогти голодуючим родинам вижити.
All
we need are 1,000 monthly donors in the next 30 days. Please call or go online now with your monthly gift of just $10. Thanks to generous government grants, every dollar you give can have up to 10 times the impact. And when you call with your credit card, we will send you this Save the Children tote bag as a thank you for your support.
Toto kote duniani
потребують вашої допомоги.
Your small monthly donation of just $10 could be the reason a child in crisis survives. Please call or go online to hungerstopsnow.org to help save lives today.
Join us on NTD Good Morning because we want you to stay informed.
Kickstart your morning with the latest you missed overnight.
Right, and don't forget that inspiration.
Absolutely, so let's shine some light on the good news too.
Tune in every weekday morning to NTD News.
District Attorney Fani Willis could face a gag order in former President Trump's Georgia election case. Fulton County Judge Scott McAfee said in a Friday ruling that Willis's racially charged speech at an Atlanta church in January was legally improper. Her speech came just days after allegations surfaced that she engaged in an improper relationship with special counsel Nathan Wade. During the speech, Willis implied that race was involved in the criticism of her decision to hire Wade.
The judge ruled Friday that although her speech did not name President Trump or other co-defendants, it did leave room for public consideration since it followed soon after a motion brought by Trump co-defendant Michael Roman. The motion called for disqualifying Willis from leading the case. An Idaho vote is expected this week on a bill that would ban the use of any public funds for cross-sex procedures. That would include state employees using work health insurance and for adults covered by Medicaid. The legislation has already passed the House. Now it just needs to clear the majority Republican Senate before it is sent to Governor Brad Little's desk. The Republican governor has said repeatedly he does not believe public funds should be used for gender transition procedures. If the bill becomes law, Idaho would become at least the 10th state to ban Medicaid funding for the cross-sex procedures for people of all ages. Idaho has been sued multiple times over attempts to deny cross-sex procedures. In one case, the state was ordered to provide an inmate with gender-changing surgery, and the inmate was later awarded roughly $2.5 million in legal fees.
And crime and violence in New York City's subway system are significantly higher than officially acknowledged by the NYPD. That's what an unnamed NYPD source told the Epoch Times. The official number of subway system arrests rose by 45% this year, and there were over 3,000 arrests in the first 2 months alone. But these figures are believed to be underestimating the true extent of the crime.
A law enforcement source says NYPD officers are incentivized to not report minor offenses in an effort to keep the numbers as low as possible. The source described the lawlessness in the subway system as really bad, saying it's like the Wild West, especially at night.
The city's own agencies disagree on how much crime is occurring. Transit released figures showing that violent subway crimes went up by 13% this year, but the mayor's office quickly pushed back, saying that crime actually dropped last month. And a man suspected of fatally shooting 3 family members in their homes near Philadelphia was arrested yesterday in New Jersey.
The suspect evaded law enforcement for hours while mobilizing across 2 states, shutting down a parade and an amusement park. Police also ordered some residents to stay in their homes. The suspect was identified as 26-year-old Andre Gordon Jr. Police say they believe he killed his stepmother, his teenage sister, and the mother of his children in 2 separate shootings on Saturday. His children's grandmother was injured when she was bludgeoned with a rifle.
He was arrested at around 5 p.m. yesterday when he was spotted walking down a street in Trenton, New Jersey. Officials don't yet have a motive for the alleged attacks. Police say that while Gordon did have minor brushes with the law, they were nothing that would indicate anything like this would happen.
A shooting in Jacksonville Beach, Florida left 1 dead and 2 injured yesterday. Police believe multiple shooters were involved in the incident, which happened out in the open, according to local authorities. Police are still searching for suspects. Police urged residents to stay indoors after the shooting, but later lifted the shelter-in-place order.
The downtown bar district and beachfront were still shut down until further notice. Investigators are working to get descriptions of the suspects to share with the public. Police are asking anyone who has more information about the shooting to contact authorities. And now for tech and business news, we're joined by NTD business host Don Ma to give us the latest updates.
All right, Don, thank you for joining us. What do you have for us today?
Okay, so what I wanted to talk to you guys about is this big conference that's happening and all eyes are closely watching. It's an Nvidia conference. I'll tell you more about that, but also I wanted to mention something about Uber paying a massive $178 million to end the legal fight. So to start off, whether we like it or not, it seems like AI is here to stay. So it matters a lot when the poster child of artificial intelligence, Nvidia, is set to kick off its annual GPU conference. And for the next 2 days, there's going to be promised and with packed of news and announcements. And that is something that even if you're not interested in AI, it's something that we should discuss. So analysts expect the chip maker to share updates about its new products, its partnership with industry leaders, and its artificial intelligence initiatives during this conference. And Nvidia's CEO is also set to give a keynote address today, actually. And he's likely going to outline what's ahead for the company in the year ahead. Now, in prior years, Nvidia has used this show to debut some of its biggest product. So the chip maker is expected to provide more details about its upcoming B100 chip. Now, this is its most capable GPU yet. It's going to be the company's next flagship product, and investors could get new details about the chip's pricing, performance, demand, and industry leaders as well are joining this conference. So it is a big deal. Like OpenAI, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google, among others, are going to take part. And that could shed even more light on NVIDIA's artificial initiatives and as well as partnerships.
Right, and chips are an essential part of the powering of AI intelligence, right? And we know, as you said, like it's exciting because it could impact so many areas of our lives, but also there are so many areas in terms of safety, national security, and other really serious points, like even in the war, in terms of China and their development of AI. So there's so much to watch here. But you mentioned Uber, okay, and they're making headlines right now, of course. There's a $178 million payment in the works. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so something about that. So the payment, $178 million, is to settle a long-running dispute with Australian taxi drivers. So when Uber as a rideshare giant entered the Australian market, those drivers lost out, apparently. And this class action lawsuit against Uber was expected to go to trial in the Supreme Court of Victoria today. It involves 8,000 taxi drivers and hire car drivers. But the lawyers said that the case is now going to be dropped now that Uber agreed to the financial settlement. And the lawyer said that drivers and car owners suffered financial losses due to Uber's aggressive entry into the market in 2012, and that the company consistently attempted to avoid compensating them. But Uber, on the other hand, does not agree with that statement.
Oh, right.
Yeah, like when Uber provided their service, I was at the airport the other day. The taxi drivers were saying, yeah, when they came in, it changed the industry so much, and New York City depends on a lot of transportation. But yeah, Don Ma, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don. And coming up, Russian President Vladimir Putin declaring a landslide victory in the country's election. Plus, what he says about Western countries putting troops in Ukraine.
A volcano in Iceland erupting for the 4th time since December, triggering evacuations and fears of damage to infrastructure. More when we come back.
Does shopping for bladder control products have you feeling like you need someone to be on the lookout for you? Now you have your privacy back. We're HDIS, and we home deliver bladder control products directly to you. We're always on the lookout for you. You get free shipping in plain, unmarked boxes. So your private matters, stay private. We understand how you feel. For over 35 years, we've delivered bladder control products to millions of Americans, just like you. You don't have to worry about incontinence any longer. Call now for your free product sample pack and over $45 in money-saving coupons. At HDIS, we're always in stock. We carry all brands in hundreds of styles and sizes. You'll be sure to get what you need, guaranteed.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog and $45 in money-saving coupons and free product samples, call 800-701-6159. That's 800-701-6159.
The biggest investigation in FBI history.
There are more than 1,100 arrests.
I sacrificed my dream job to share this information with the American people.
Those involved must be held accountable.
He's an innocent man.
It's going to change narratives no matter what your political perspective is.
When I drink it, the first thing was I feel the warmth in my tummy. It's kind of like gently radiating out, a kind of a very comforting warmth. And it was really good, actually. I felt much better. I did feel, actually, an effect. And I find that it is actually better when I take it regularly.
It's actually steamed and dried 9 times. And so it's really, the essence is really extracted.
Then the second time, I tried it really like on an empty stomach and just 2 teaspoons of it, and over a few times. And wow, that was a big difference, because suddenly I could feel, wow, I was very good energized. I didn't have to eat. I could work outside in the garden for a couple of hours, and I still felt very well. And I was impressed by that. So I think it's a good product.
There's always a searching process for beauty. You know it when you see it.
I'm Iris Tao at the White House, and we are NTD.
President Vladimir Putin won by a landslide in Russia's election this weekend, which many critics have called illegitimate. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the win, which means Putin is set to embark on a new 6-year term.
Putin will overtake Joseph Stalin as Russia's longest-serving leader in more than 200 years if he completes his term. The Russian leader won nearly 88% of the vote, the highest ever result in Russia's post-Soviet history. In a speech to supporters after early election results were in, Putin warned those who would try to frighten the Russian people or suppress their will.
No one has ever succeeded in anything like this in history. It has not worked now and will not work in the future. Never.
On Monday morning, Putin discussed what the presence of Western troops in Ukraine would mean.
But I've already said this, and it is clear to everyone that this will be just one step away from a full-scale World War III. I don't think anybody is interested in this.
Putin also commented on opposition leader Alexei Navalny's death for the first time on Monday, saying he had supported a prisoner swap for him just days before his death. Protests were held in many countries on Sunday. People gathered in front of the Russian embassy in Washington, D.C. A group of protesters also showed up near the Russian embassy in London, heaping scorn on Putin's re-election.
There is still hope. There is still hope for this country, and there is still hope for these people. We're not all murderers, and we are not all afraid.
Protesters in Paris also gathered in front of the Eiffel Tower on Sunday. In an action called Noon against Putin, some Russians went to their local polling station to either spoil their ballot paper or to vote for one of the 3 candidates standing against Putin. In Berlin, Yulia Navalnaya, the widow of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, took part in a noon protest against Putin. Navalnaya was standing in line in Berlin, where hundreds of Russians lined up to vote. This Russian artist living in Berlin says the election in Russia is fake.
Lots of people had to flee their country to be free, to have an ability to express their real opinion. concerning this so-called election.
The United States, Germany, the United Kingdom, and other nations have said the vote was neither free nor fair due to the imprisonment of political opponents and censorship. At least 74 people were arrested on Sunday across Russia. Over the previous 2 days, there were scattered incidents of protest as some Russians set fire to voting booths or poured green dye into ballot boxes. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And now we have some short headlines from Sweden, Germany, and other European countries. The European Union's 27 foreign ministers gathered in Brussels today to discuss sanctions on both Hamas and Israeli settlers in the West Bank.
The foreign minister of Cyprus said a second shipment of aid for the enclave was ready to leave the country. Israel denies obstructing deliveries into Gaza and has blamed failures on aid agencies.
Israel also accuses Hamas of intercepting and diverting humanitarian assistance. Many at the meeting raised concerns about the worsening humanitarian situation in Gaza. The NATO flag was raised outside the Swedish parliament on Monday in a ceremony marking its accession to the alliance. Sweden officially joined NATO on March 7th, 2 years after Russia invaded Ukraine.
The Scandinavian nation ultimately concluded that the alliance was its best safety guarantee. The flag went up alongside the Swedish and European Union flags.
For NATO, Sweden and Finland are the most significant additions to the alliance in decades. Their membership is also a blow for Russian President Vladimir Putin.
The Russian leader has long sought to prevent any further strengthening of the alliance. NATO's Article 5 states that an attack on one member is regarded as an attack on all.
Our NATO membership is not aimed against anyone. It also doesn't change the basics or aims for our foreign and defense policies. The preservation of Sweden's freedom and independence continues to be our most important goal.
Police said Polish farmers blocked 2 border crossings with Germany today. They're joining protests against European Union environmental regulations and cheap imports.
Farmers in Poland and across the EU have been calling for changes to the EU's Green Deal. The plan intends to tackle climate change and greatly restricts farmers.
The farmers also want to bring back customs duties on imports of agricultural products from Ukraine. Those duties were waived after Russia's invasion in 2022. The farmers say cheap Ukrainian imports are flooding EU markets, leaving them unable to compete.
A local police spokesperson said that the blockades are scheduled to continue until Wednesday. Polish farmers are planning more protests across the country on Wednesday as well.
In the Italian Alps, a daring rescue on Saturday saved 3 mountain climbers. The alpinists were stuck in an icy gully at an altitude of 7,500 feet in Piedmont.
In a delicate operation, the fire brigade rescued the 3 mountaineers with the help of a helicopter crew.
Rescuers rappelled off the helicopter and proceeded to climb the mountain using pickaxes.
The mountain climbers were then hoisted up to the helicopter one by one.
Incredible. And NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg is in Azerbaijan today. It's part of his 3-nation tour of the South Caucasus.
Azerbaijan is currently involved in an armed conflict with Armenia over a disputed region. The country's defense minister today thanked NATO for supporting what he called the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan.
Yesterday, the NATO chief met the president of Azerbaijan. Stoltenberg reportedly said that Armenia and Azerbaijan now have an opportunity to achieve enduring peace after years of conflict.
Azerbaijan's president echoed that, saying his country is closer than ever to a peace with Armenia. A volcano in Iceland erupted over the weekend for the 4th time since December. Authorities said it still posed a danger to infrastructure, even as the lava flows began to slow on Sunday.
The eruption began on Saturday evening with fountains of molten rock soaring from a roughly 2-mile-long fissure. This was roughly the same size and at the same place as the last eruption in February. Authorities warned for weeks that an eruption was imminent on the Reykjanes Peninsula just south of the capital, Reykjavik. Footage from early on Sunday showed lava flowing from just a few hundred meters from Grindavik. It's a fishing town of about 4,000 residents that was evacuated during an eruption in November and again during the last 2 eruptions. An outbreak in January there burned to the ground several of its homes. Local media reports that a few residents who had since returned home were evacuated again on Saturday. After the eruption in January, the government worked to strengthen barricades in the area to steer lava away from residential areas. Iceland's Director General of Civil Protection and Emergency Management spoke about the possible dangers of the eruption. He said that the lava is about 1,000 yards from the shore.
So if it goes on, it will end up in the sea, and that means that we have explosions and gas coming from that area, but that will be very localized.
He said there is no risk of any ash cloud or gas spreading far from the area. Iceland's airport does not appear to be affected, and the operator said that it remained fully operational. Authorities were also monitoring lava flowing toward the peninsula's geothermal power plant. The February eruption cut off heating to more than 20,000 people as lava flows destroyed roads and pipelines.
People in England may now have trouble getting puberty blockers. Its health agency said it will stop routinely prescribing the drugs. It says there's just not enough evidence to justify using them. For Insight, I spoke with Colin Wright, an evolutionary biologist. He's also a fellow at the Manhattan Institute and founding editor of Reality's Last Stand. Colin, good to see you again. Now, break down the decision by England's National Health Service for us.
Yeah, this is huge news. It's surely been a long time coming, and for many of us, too long, unfortunately. We've had no data on the long-term effects of puberty blockers treating healthy kids that had confusion about their gender because, frankly, at the time, nobody had thought to try something so extreme. Then activists tried to convince people that the absence of evidence of harm, the lack of studies about harm, just because the lack of studies overall, was somehow evidence of the absence of harm, which is not how evidence-based medicine works. So Oxford University professor Michael Biggs, he was the first to point out that NHS was giving children puberty blockers without any good evidence to support its benefits. And he also pointed out that puberty blockers appear to exacerbate dysphoria, using research showing that almost 100% of kids put on puberty blockers proceed on to cross-sex hormones, which sterilizes them. Conversely, when not put on puberty blockers, and when kids are just allowed to just naturally grow and develop, and this is kids who had gender dysphoria, the vast majority of them desist and just live happy, healthy lives in their natural bodies as adults.
Now, as you mentioned, England's NHS cites lack of evidence. What is the scope of children who were prescribed puberty blockers in England, and how was this able to take place to begin with if there wasn't any enough evidence to support?
Yeah, so the number of kids prescribed puberty blockers in England is on the order of probably 1,000 or so. There's not a whole lot of great data on this. In the U.S., we have a little better data. A Reuters study showed that from about 2017 to 2021, about 5,000 kids were put on puberty blockers, and the numbers have only gone up every year, so it's much more than that. And plus, this is a conservative estimate because this was only from private insurance claims, to my knowledge. And some data that is currently being looking at suggests that this was orders of magnitude smaller than what the real case happens to be. Really, this managed to get pushed through due to activism and doctors being frightened into silence. Another big reason this was pushed through is because of false claims about the puberty blockers being, safe, effective, and reversible. But this is a claim without any evidence whatsoever. What activist researchers did is take what's known about the benefits of puberty blockers in children for treating a different condition called precocious puberty, which is a condition where very young kids, say 5, 6, 7 years old, begin puberty. And at this age, it is very detrimental for their body development, their bone growth. The FDA approved the use of these puberty blockers in these cases because the benefits vastly outweighed the risks. And the idea was that they'd go off puberty blockers during the time when they would normally develop in going through puberty with their peers.
Are there any signs that the U.S. or individual states in the U.S. will follow suit in restricting puberty blockers anytime soon?
No big indication, at least from the medical organizations. There are a lot of states that are trying to pass laws that restrict it because when medical bodies aren't really governing themselves, we need to step in and make sure that they are using the best evidence possible.
All right, Colin Wright, evolutionary biologist and fellow at Manhattan Institute. Thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you.
Coming up, people across the U.S. come out in force to celebrate Irish heritage at several major St. Patrick's Day parades. See the highlights from New York, Boston, Kansas City, and more.
And sequels are leading the weekend box office list. The top movies in theaters right now after the break.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
They're just young people, hungry, homeless, and vulnerable. Abused youth often feel safer on the street. Now, more than ever, that's the most dangerous place of all. Covenant House is helping young adults facing homelessness. We're providing safe shelter to thousands, but the need is overwhelming, and no young person is ever turned away. Please call or go online now with your gift of $19 a month to help a young person. You'll provide safe shelter, hot meals, and medical care. Your gift will show them they're loved. Homeless young people are afraid and alone with nowhere else to turn.
You want to know that there's somewhere you can go that's safe. So the Covenant House did that for us.
Please call now with your gift of $19 a month. We'll send you this blanket as a reminder of the comfort your gift provides a young person tonight. Please don't wait. Your gift is the lifeline a young person needs now. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org. Thank you for saving precious lives.
My name's Jen Marshall. I've been playing professional football in the Women's League for 3 years now. We're about 3.5 weeks out of my second surgery now. I had no pain whatsoever, no tingling, no numbness, and I felt incredible. I'm able to do pretty much anything. He doesn't want me pushing it too much, but I'm able to do, assisted pull-ups now. I'm riding a bike. I'm walking continuously at an incline on treadmills. I can do push-ups again. I can get out of bed, no problem. You're in great hands.
Bonatti succeeds where others fail.
There's always a searching process for beauty. You know it when you see it.
Chicago celebrated its world-famous St. Patrick's Day celebration on Saturday. The event featured the Windy City's river gleaming in a vibrant shade of emerald. It's a tradition dating back to 1962. The Chicago Plumbers Union infuses the river with 50 pounds of green dye. It covers a quarter-mile stretch with a vivid algae-like color.
The Plumbers Union said the dye would maintain its brilliant hue for about 5 hours. The union reassured the public the environmentally friendly dye would not harm wildlife.
And Manhattan's Fifth Avenue turned green on Saturday. Large crowds decked out in festive emerald attire turned out to cheer on thousands of marchers in the St. Patrick's Day parade.
Marching bands, performers, and politicians all walked the parade route to celebrate Irish heritage, along with members of the New York City Fire and Police departments.
Sightseers lined the streets of Manhattan to celebrate all things Irish, drawing visitors from around the U.S. and internationally.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul, New York City Mayor Eric Adams, and Attorney General Letitia James marched in the parade.
And Boston also marked the holiday yesterday with an extra special celebration. This year's event was the bicentennial of a parade first held in 1824.
Bagpipes set the traditional mood as the sounds of the unique instruments wafted over the crowd, while those who prefer more modern music also had something to enjoy.
Irish flags were waved proudly in the crowd, and a leprechaun mascot greeted the parade goers.
St. Patrick's Day commemorates Ireland's patron saint. It was popularized largely by Irish Catholic immigrants.
And Kansas City also held a St. Patrick's Day parade on Sunday. A marching band of drummers provided the music with their fast and steady beats, while others rode atop a truck, yelling and smiling and engaging onlookers.
Along the route, a man driving a Corvette stopped long enough to shake the hand of a police officer, and several others did too. One float was pulled by a truck with a sign on the front that read, "Kansas City Strong."
It was just last month that a deadly shooting occurred at the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs celebration. A Kansas City Police Department spokesperson said 400 officers were on the scene of yesterday's parade.
Dublin, Ireland had the granddaddy of all St. Patrick's Day parades yesterday. It's a celebration where everyone can be Irish for a day. This year, the parade had an international flavor. Let's take a look at some of the festivities.
St. Patrick Day parades around the world are known for their raucous celebrations. This one yesterday in Dublin, Ireland, was no exception. It's a bucket list activity drawing people from around the world to attend the festivities.
It's truly amazing because we all are from Latin America, and we all came here to celebrate this amazing holiday, actually.
It's so exciting to be here and to overview the whole parade, and we're so excited.
My name is Patrick, and I'm with my friends. And we decided to enjoy and to take a good time in Dublin.
What will many do after the parade finishes?
Watch the parade and then go and find all the pubs and enjoy ourselves.
Event organizers expected over 500,000 people to attend this year's parade. It brings over 4,000 street performers, pageant companies, and marching bands hailing from Ireland and around the world. St. Patrick's Day observes the death of the patron saint of Ireland. The day has evolved into a celebration of Irish culture with parades, music, dancing, and drinking with a whole lot of green.
Researchers are testing deep brain stimulation as treatment for people with severe depression. Doctors say it's like a pacemaker for the brain. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details on the device.
Emily Hollenbeck knows depression all too well. Her first major bout happened in college after her father's suicide in 2009. Her mother committed suicide while she was in grad school.
My family has a very long history with mental illness and depression specifically. My parents actually both took their lives before I was 30.
Hollenbeck was willing to try something extreme, so she decided to have electrodes implanted in her brain as part of an experimental therapy.
If I hadn't had DBS, I'm pretty sure I would not be alive today, because ECT was working as a short-term treatment. But like I have said sometimes with other treatments, medication, ECT, my brain will respond for a while, and then it's like as soon as a stressor hits, it crumples.
Researchers say deep brain stimulation, or DBS, could eventually help millions of Americans like her with treatment-resistant depression. DBS gives patients targeted electrical impulses, much like a pacemaker for the brain.
At first I was blown away because the concept of it seemed so just intense. Like, it's brain surgery, you have wires embedded in your brain. But I also felt like at that point, I had tried everything.
Thin metal electrodes were implanted in a region of her brain called the subcallosal cingulate cortex. The area regulates emotional behavior and is involved in feelings of sadness.
So not only do we give stimulation to area 25 very precisely, but we can measure what's actually happening with the electrophysiology. We can get the brain activity off the device itself.
Dr. Helen Mayberg is a neurologist and pioneer in DBS research. She says analyzing the brain activity of DBS patients gives researchers information about what a patient needs.
So instead of flipping a coin, turning it up for no reason, adding a medication when they need the DBS, sending them to therapy when they need a medication, we're actually using the layers of the data we have to make those decisions.
For Hollenbeck, the treatment has been life-changing.
Just being able to experience spontaneity, to be able to look forward to things. So, you know, thinking, okay, I'm going to go to this thrift store at 4 o'clock. Oh, that's fun. That's exciting. Well, what's near there? Is there a cafe or a cool restaurant? Like, these things wouldn't even be on my radar with depression. They wouldn't even be possibilities.
Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Daylight savings time. Are there more pros than cons? It's been about 1 week since most Americans turned their clocks up by an hour. For insight on this, I spoke with Dr. Brandon Crawford. He's a functional neurologist and a speaker on light therapy and laser therapy. Dr. Crawford, thank you for joining us. Now, we're now 1 hour ahead of the body's internal clock. What does this do to the human body?
Well, this does a lot of things. I mean, first of all, let's say it irritates parents because kids are harder to go to sleep and to wake up in the morning. But we have to understand that this influences all of our clock genes, our circadian clock genes in our body. So this can do anything from impairing our cognition, disrupting our memory. It can even cause our hormones to be out of balance. It can literally affect every cell in our body.
So more on that, a study published in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine found that from 1990 to 2018, daylight saving time correlated to higher medical errors. What's going on here?
That was a really interesting study. I do like it. I read over it. So here's the thing. They found that the people were actually more emotional with how they were awarding these claims, right? So the severity of the malpractice incidents were not actually worse, right? It wasn't like worse things were happening, but the judgments were being changed. And so basically, whenever you're sleep deprived, there's an area of your brain called the prefrontal cortex. This is where we reason. This is where our executive skills are. And so when we're sleep deprived, the prefrontal cortex is heavily impacted and we see a dampening of this region. So we become more emotional. The lower subcortical regions like the amygdala, the limbic system, these really come into play here, and we make less rational, more emotional type of judgments. And that's, I believe, what you see actually going on in this study.
Now, doctor, so how can people make the most of daylight saving to maintain their well-being and also get the most, productivity out of this season?
Absolutely. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to wake up about 30 to 60 minutes before the sun rises. I want you to be outside for about 10 minutes or so. I want you to get that low angle light in your eyes. This talks to an area of your brain. It says, hey, let's wake up. Let's make our muscles move better. Let's let our hormones start to function, our neurotransmitters, all those things. I also want you to be outside midday and get that peak sunlight, but then also be outside as the sun is setting, so that now the brain is going, okay, it's time to get some sleep. I need to start producing melatonin. And so that's how you're going to set yourself up to really get through this cycle.
Dr. Brandon Crawford is definitely very interesting during this time. For anyone that wants more information, they could look you up. You're a functional neurologist. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sequels led the way at the weekend box office. Here are the weekend's top 3 films in theaters.
Arthur the King, starring Mark Wahlberg, debuted in 3rd place, earning $7.5 million.
Muad'Dib, the prophet, the one who points the way.
Dune Part 2 spent a second straight weekend in 2nd place. $29.1 million put the sci-fi sequel at $205 million domestic.
Master Shifu, I finally found something I'm good at, and now you want to just take it away from me?
Another big weekend for Kung Fu Panda 4. The animated adventure kept the crown, taking in $30 million for a 10-day domestic total of $108 million.
Inner peace. Inner peace. Keep your surf off my turf! Dinner, please. Dinner with peas in a sesame soy glaze. This is not working at all.
For round-the-clock coverage of original news, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app.
And be sure to stick around for NTD Newsroom at 3 p.m. Eastern. We'll cover more stories from the U.S. and around the world.
What's happened to this world we're living in? Why?
For the 4 years he has been on this earth, he has known nothing but war.
Wherever I go, the things I see, I just want to turn away. The dreams I have, the stories I could tell, will they still be possible? This year, more than ever, I need a brand new world, a clean world. Where I can improve myself and be inspired. My stage can be anywhere and everywhere, but it begins here.
Ganjing World, a brighter way of life.
بیست و سه سال
16 سال
عمري ما هفت
اما داعش کردیان برانبر خشک و دایکان یزدی اما کاری که دور دور لهمو چمک دموکراسی و موافقانی مرو و انسانیت او بارو خی که است های به تایبت لایرا خوشبوریا بشه که دگرت و با حالانه که اداره اوباما کرد
مریم بو او هفت روز بو و داعش اسکرد
تامبوم کرا قوتینیز گریا بما متشکر به هر پیدن نبو باوان رحم نم
ودمنا سوالان من خادران نزل باوان وستم بس نه قوبس ناش بجوش بانش.
They would literally be auctioned in front of soldiers, and then the soldiers begin to bid.
زارود وان همو جیبرم. چه حملی زارود دم واسه وان همو جیبرم.
وحشیگری کی توا عیاره ظلمی کی یک جار گرگاور لما افراتنا کرا و تعدایی کی زور زوریان میگه اما نه روزانه دست فروشی ده. Imagine being a child, you know, having a child mentality, and these evil people come and wheel you away from the only safety you've ever known.
The shining gem of New England. This delightful seaside city of Newport is one of the most beautiful places in the state. Today, we bring you here as we meet with our friends and fellow musicians from the Hermitage Piano Trio. As a team, they have garnered multiple Grammy Award nominations with their breathtaking performances.
Oh, wow, I did not think this instrument can make that sound, right?
The pandemic made this reunion even more special.
3 of us, we like it because we feel music the same way, so...
Don't miss us on the next episode of Piano Talks.
Welcome to NTD News Today.
Here are our top stories.
The Biden administration accused of indirect censorship by pressuring social media companies to suppress content. Is this a violation of free speech? The Supreme Court is hearing arguments today, and our legal correspondent brings us the latest update.
The immigration crisis could exacerbate the homelessness crisis in border states. Arizona officials are increasingly worried as the influx of border crossers shows no signs of stopping, while funding for shelters runs dry.
United Airlines promising to review recent safety mishaps. Find out what the CEO is saying and why an attorney says Boeing shares the fault.
Putin's election win has many nations worried, but not China. Hear what the Russian leader has to say about future relations with Beijing.
March Madness is finally upon us. The NCAA tournament has been revealed, but only one team can win it. NTD's Dave Martin joins us to discuss who the favorites are.
Cherry blossoms put on a show in Washington, D.C. with a historically early bloom. Find out the fate of a beloved cherry tree underdog.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
Hi, I'm David Lamb, sitting in for Chris Beers.
And to begin the show, New York City will no longer be providing long-term housing to adult illegal immigrants.
Mayor Eric Adams said the ruling is effective immediately and meant to last through the duration of the immigration crisis. The city made the announcement after reaching a settlement with homeless advocacy groups. The deal does not impact families.
Adults under 23 years old will be offered an additional 30 days for a total of 60 days of shelter before being asked to move out. Waiting rooms where new arrivals have been sleeping will no longer be available.
Adams says his city is now relieved of certain legal obligations and should be able to better manage the influx of new arrivals. Homelessness on steroids. An Arizona official describes the effects immigration could soon have on local communities. Multiple migrant shelters are closing as funds for the multi-million-dollar operation are running out. Here's more.
Homelessness on steroids, we're going to take individuals who are already homeless in the community. We have that population who are homeless in this area, and adding to that an additional 1,000 people a day.
Pima County Administrator Jan Lesher says she's concerned about March 31st, which is when most migrant shelters in the Arizona county will have to close. The county is ending its contract with the Casa Alitas shelters because federal funding is running out.
We currently have 5 locations. From those, after March 31st, we will only remain in 1.
Lesher says the county would start funding Casa Alitas once federal money runs out, but they can't.
My main concern after March 31st is what is going to happen to those other 960 people per day that are coming through the border.
About 1,000 people a day are currently entering the Arizona county illegally. Casa Alitas say they'll only be able to handle around 40, stirring fears of increased homelessness.
The cost is about $1 million a week. And that's simply because of the volume of individuals coming in, which, $48 million a year is not something that can be easily absorbed into a Pima County budget.
Just last month, the main migrant shelter in San Diego also closed its doors. This came after it burned through $6 million, twice the originally planned $3 million it was supposed to run on. San Diego County Supervisor Jim Desmond told NTD that NGOs started dropping off immigrants at the airport after the shelter closed.
And unfortunately, our airport now has become a migrant shelter. And for tourists to fly in here and they see, people sleeping on the floor, or migrants just not being attended to, it's not a good look.
Similar to Pima County, San Diego was also receiving around 1,000 immigrants a day, leading to fears that Arizona will soon have to battle similar problems.
And at a national level, what's the cost of caring for illegal immigrants seeking a better life in the U.S.? The House Committee on Homeland Security recently released a report saying a significant portion of funds used on the border crisis is going to health care. Joining us to discuss, we have Andrew Arthur, fellow in law and policy at the Center for Immigration Studies and a former immigration judge. Arthur, welcome. Great to have you with us. To begin with, what's the situation as you see it in terms of the healthcare system? These illegal immigrants need to be treated and their inability to pay.
Yeah, and Stephanie, we've been in a situation in which we've had what's called an emergency department crisis, ever since the COVID-19 pandemic. We saw strains on the system then, and ever since, those strains haven't been resolved. States and municipalities primarily help fund those facilities, and there just isn't enough money to do it, especially now when you're talking about 5 million plus new migrants who are coming to the United States. Few of those migrants, if any, actually have health insurance, and for that reason, they get most of their primary care, regardless of what the ailment is, from those emergency departments that have to treat them under a 1986 law. We've also seen huge increases and stresses on the system in delivery departments and hospitals, as many of those migrants show up pregnant, show up about to give birth, with very little prenatal care. And so consequently, we've had, babies that have been born in the United States, technically United States citizens, who now, must receive up to 30 days of post-birth care in those hospitals. It's a huge problem because very little of it is reimbursed by anybody. So the hospitals have to absorb those costs, which means that they get passed on to the people who do have health insurance. And if you see your health insurance rates rise, that's part of the reason why.
Oh, wow. And also in terms of local communities, how could this be impacting them and their health needs?
Yeah, so, one of the things that we see is that, these migrants go to certain places around the country, New York, Chicago, Denver, Philadelphia, and they have very limited medical resources. They, have medical resources for the local community, but they don't really, they plan years in advance, and they really haven't planned for this huge influx of people showing up because they didn't know that they were going to be coming. So, that is a big issue, and that starts at the border. Yuma County was $20 million in the hole in Arizona, which is right along the border, a couple of years ago because of unreimbursed medical expenses. We're now seeing those expenses move into the interior of the United States as hospitals in those cities that migrants are going to are increasingly accessing that medical care. We also know that the Biden administration is flying in tens of thousands of migrants from Cuba and Haiti. As soon as those folks land, they're immediately eligible for Medicaid, which means that they can go to any doctor they want. And the cost is going to be borne in part by the federal government, but also about a third of that is paid for by the states. So this is a huge issue that has impacts all around the system.
Yeah, and to that point about, these people flying in without needing to provide ID on these flights that are coming into the U.S., how does that pass legally?
Yeah, so the Department of Homeland Security is supposed to verify their identities before they get to the United States. But if you look at the countries that those people are flying from, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela have very adverse governments to the United States. They're openly hostile to this country. Haiti doesn't even have a government, so I have no idea how you verify the identity of any of those people. So that is an additional problem. And as you're probably aware, the Center for Immigration Studies, where I work, tried to find out which airports they're flying to. And yet we were told we couldn't have that information because bad actors may exploit the system, which means one of two things. Either bad people may be attempting to exploit the system itself, or alternatively, DHS doesn't want to tell those states and localities that they're flying tens of thousands of people there. Miami, Orlando, New York, places like that. So yeah, something's fishy here. We're going to keep trying to get to the bottom of it, but it's all very disturbing.
And as a former immigration judge, what's your view on what needs to change and what's in the way of that?
Yeah, it's actually really simple, Stephanie. Really all we need to do is detain those folks who show up. I was a judge at a detained court, and right now, detained courts are starting and finishing cases in 42 days. And if we detain those folks, we'd be able to screen out who are the good people and who are the bad people, who needs protection, who doesn't. But the Biden administration refuses to detain the vast majority of people who come to the United States, in fact, by my calculations, and they're conservative ones, about 88.5% of everybody who was brought to this country and processed for immigration proceedings was actually released. So, and because of that, people keep coming. All we really need to do is to start detaining them. It's simply a matter of money and will. Right now, Congress has to provide the money, but until the administration shows the will, it's not going to happen.
All right, Andrew Arthur, fellow in law and policy at the Center for Immigration Studies and former immigration judge. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks. All right, former President Donald Trump was in Ohio over the weekend.
The presumptive nominee campaigned there for Bernie Moreno ahead of the state's GOP Senate primary and focused heavily on his own upcoming rematch against President Biden.
With his nomination secured, former President Trump is now focusing on November's general election. Trump told supporters in Dayton, Ohio Saturday, if he loses, he doesn't think the country will have another meaningful election. He lamented the economy under President Biden and said another 4 years would deeply damage the country.
Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country.
The Trump campaign later clarified the comment came amid discussion about the U.S. auto industry. Biden's campaign spokesperson condemned Trump's, quote, extremism, his thirst for revenge, and his threats of political violence. A rematch with Biden is likely to be extremely close. A Reuters Ipsos poll last week found the two candidates in a statistical tie with registered voters. Trump also appealed to Black and Hispanic voters, who will play a decisive role in November. Trump has been narrowing the gap with Biden in opinion polls with non-white voters, who formed a core part of Biden's winning coalition in 2020. Ahead of the GOP Senate primary in Ohio this Tuesday, Trump once again expressed his support of Bernie Moreno, calling him an America First champion.
Bernie is a political outsider who has spent his entire life building up Ohio communities. He's highly respected all over the country, and he's going to be a warrior in Washington.
Moreno will face Secretary of State Frank LaRose and State Senator Matt Dolan. Trump took a dig at Dolan, whose family owns the Cleveland Guardians, saying he's a victim of woke left lunatics for renaming the Major League Baseball team in 2021. Meanwhile, in Washington, former Vice President Mike Pence said he would not endorse his former boss. He told Fox News on Friday his decision should come as no surprise. Pence said Trump is campaigning on a platform at odds with the conservative agenda they governed with during their 4 years in office. Pence publicly broke with Trump after the Capitol breach on January 6, 2021. He said his life was put in danger that day and later urged Republican primary voters not to choose Trump as their White House candidate. But Pence said he respects fellow Republicans who plan on voting for Trump.
And now to some updates on the former president's legal battles.
Trump's lawyers say he's unable to get a bond to cover the $464 million New York civil fraud judgment.
In a court filing today, Trump's lawyers said getting a bond in the full amount is, quote, a practical impossibility. The legal team says they've contacted roughly 30 surety companies to no avail.
Trump has to post a bond for the full amount by next week. Otherwise, New York Attorney General Letitia James will be able to seize his assets while he appeals.
The filing says Trump and his organization needs close to $1 billion in cash to collateralize the bond and have sufficient capital to run the business and satisfy its other obligations. Coming up, the Supreme Court considers government censorship. Can the Biden administration encourage social media platforms to block speech? Our legal correspondent has the latest update.
Idaho is moving closer to banning the use of public funds for cross-sex procedures. More about the expected vote and who it would affect coming up on NTD News Today.
The top two presidential candidates are making their rounds in a race like no other.
Our freedoms are literally on the ballot this November.
We will bring this country back together through success.
Watch our special coverage of the upcoming primaries, where we'll be putting each candidate's policies under a microscope to find out what it all means for the people. The Nation Decides 2024 with Steve Lance and Tiffany Meyer, live on March 19th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on NTD News.
What do you do when your tire goes flat and there's no air anywhere? You reach for Bullseye Pro.
the smarter, faster, hands-free way to fill it up with air. Bullseye Pro is equipped with a rechargeable lithium-ion power plant. So fast and so convenient. It's like the power of an air compressor in the palm of your hand. Look, you can inflate all 4 tires on a single charge. It has a built-in smart pressure digital sensor that gauges and automatically stops when the set tire pressure is reached. Easily inflate pool toys, exercise balls, and more. Call or go online now and get the complete Bullseye Pro inflation system for the factory direct price of just $79.99. Plus, we'll ship your entire order free, and we'll give you a 50% discount on a second one. Order now.
To order, call 1-800-984-7221. That's 1-800-984-7221, or go to getbullseyepro.com.
If you're living with diabetes, this is the sound that could change your life.
Great news for people living with diabetes. Now you can wear a continuous glucose monitor and eliminate routine finger sticks. The days of repeated, painful finger sticks are over.
Just call 800-215-1658.
If you use insulin daily to manage your condition, a continuous glucose monitor could help you control your diabetes and reduce or eliminate those painful finger sticks. If you have Medicare or private insurance, US Med can deliver a CGM system right to your door. And if you qualify, there may be little or no cost to you. Shipping is free, and we'll even bill your insurer directly. Call now to get your continuous glucose monitoring system so you can take control of your diabetes and get back to enjoying life.
Just call 800-215-1658. That's 800-215-1658.
A performance that truly matters. For each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. Shen Yun. Coming to Lincoln Center, April 3rd through the 14th. Buy tickets now at shenyun.com.
There's always a searching process for beauty. You know it when you see it.
Hi, I'm Kelly Wright. We thank you for joining us and watching America's Hope here on NTD News. Bottom line is, I know you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, but let's give you some good news in the midst of the bad news. Watch us nightly, right here on NTD News, for a full dose of America's Hope.
The Supreme Court today hears oral arguments in the Murthy v. Missouri case. Biden administration officials appealed a lower court decision that limits their communications with social media companies. But attorneys general from Missouri and Louisiana say the government's involvement in monitoring user speech is censorship. We turn now to our legal correspondent, Arlene Richards, for the latest on what's happening in the courtroom.
Okay, so Arlene, good to see you again. I know the oral arguments are still underway, but what's been happening so far?
So far, both sides have given their arguments, and the government is arguing that they should be permitted to continue communicating with the social media companies. They say that the lower court's decision was very vague in terms of what they can communicate, and it's not clear to them what they can say and what they can't say. For example, they say there are areas where government agencies do have access to important information that can help platforms make moderation decisions. And they use the example of the CDC informing the platforms about what they call hazardous public health information being posted on their platforms at that time.
Right.
And so this case originated from 2 states suing the Biden administration because they were censoring user speech. I mean, what are their arguments?
So they're saying that this came up in the aftermath of the COVID pandemic and the 2020 election, when platforms were blocking posts and also suspending some of the accounts. And they argue that these actions were actually censoring speech and it violated the First Amendment. So they argued that the government was coercing social media platforms to censor free speech, and for example, by saying, we're considering making changes to certain laws that protect you from lawsuits. And as a result of saying those kinds of things, then the platforms would act and do what they wanted.
We heard earlier from some legal analysis saying that our guest thought it may be a 9-0 decision for free speech. What's your take? How do you think the judges are leaning so far?
Well, so far from what I've seen, the conservative justices are concerned about this idea that the government is coercing speech, coercing the platforms to act. And there are also Justices Alito and Thomas pointed to certain emails that where officials seem to be threatening platforms to act. And in some of those emails, the officials were essentially cursing them out. Now, on the other hand, justices on both sides tried to get the state's lawyer to explain more specifically what forms of persuasion is acceptable and what isn't. And they are concerned that there are some national security interests that should be monitored. Justice Sotomayor said there are all types of speech that could do harm. And I think essentially what the justices are going to have to rule on is what speech is acceptable and what isn't. Whether it's going to be a 9-0 or not, I'm not sure, but I'm sure the experts know.
Yeah, and just like you said before, I mean, it could be very vague on the regulation. And we have, with the presidential election coming up, the candidates will be using social media to reach out to their constituents. So thank you so much, Arlene.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Apple's iPhone could be getting Google AI built in. Bloomberg reported today that the two tech giants are in talks to build Google's artificial intelligence engines, Gemini, into the iPhone.
Citing people familiar with the situation, the report said Apple's upcoming iPhone software update is set to include new capabilities based on its own AI models, but that the company is seeking a partner to power generative AI features, including functions for creating images and writing essays based on simple prompts. The two parties are still discussing terms of the partnership, and Bloomberg added it was unlikely that any deal would be announced until Apple's annual Worldwide Developers Conference in June. The world's biggest phone maker has also held discussions with Microsoft-backed OpenAI and considered using its model, according to the report. Last month, Apple CEO Tim Cook said the company will disclose more about its future plans for generative AI later this year, adding that the company is investing, quote, significantly in the area.
The CEO of United Airlines is promising to review recent safety incidents. The airline experienced several safety emergencies in the past 2 weeks. Last Friday, an external panel was missing from a United aircraft when it landed in Oregon. Before that, a United-operated Boeing 737 MAX rolled onto the grass in Houston. And earlier, a United-operated Boeing 777 lost a tire after takeoff from San Francisco.
In a message to United's customers, CEO Scott Kirby says he's confident that the airline will learn the right lessons. He says United will, quote, continue to run an operation that puts safety first.
United plans to have an extra day of in-person training for all pilots starting in May and a centralized training curriculum for new hire maintenance technicians.
An aviation attorney told Fox News on Sunday that some of the mishaps may be Boeing's fault, but in some other cases, the blame lies with the airlines themselves.
I think you have to divide the issues that have happened between Boeing, where there's a lot of self-inflicted wounds, design defects, manufacturing defects, we'll talk about that, and maintenance errors on the part of an airline, let's say United.
The attorney says the tire that fell off and the panel that fell off are likely maintenance problems by the airlines.
But the attorney also adds he believes the door plug that fell off is Boeing's fault. He says it's likely a manufacturing defect. An Idaho vote is expected this week on a bill that would ban the use of any public funds for cross-sex procedures. That would include state employees using work health insurance and for adults covered by Medicaid. The legislation has already passed the House. Now it just needs to clear the majority Republican Senate before it is sent to Governor Brad Little's desk. The Republican governor has said repeatedly he does not believe public funds should be used for gender transition procedures. If the bill becomes law, Idaho would become at least the 10th state to ban Medicaid funding for the cross-sex procedures for people of all ages. Idaho has been sued multiple times over attempts to deny cross-sex procedures. In one case, the state was ordered to provide an inmate with gender-changing surgery, and the inmate was later awarded roughly $2.5 million in legal fees.
Crime and violence in New York City's subway system are significantly higher than officially acknowledged by the NYPD. That's what an unnamed NYPD source told the Epoch Times. The official number of subway system arrests rose by 45% this year, and there were over 3,000 arrests in the first 2 months alone. But these figures are believed to underestimate the true extent of crime.
A law enforcement source says NYPD officers are incentivized to not report minor offenses in an effort to keep the numbers as low as possible. The source described the lawlessness in the subway system as really bad, saying it's like the Wild West, especially at night.
The city's own agencies disagree on how much crime is occurring. Transit released figures showing that violent subway crimes went up by 13% this year, but the mayor's office quickly pushed back, saying that crime actually dropped last month. Coming up, nearly half of all the world's population is voting in a major election this year. Secretary of State Antony Blinken saying China and Russia are behind disinformation campaigns around the globe. We have more on the Summit for Democracy in South Korea.
Polish farmers block 2 border crossings with Germany. We'll have more on the protests against European Union environmental regulations and cheap imports when we return.
Funny expression. There's a little scar right below his neck. The artist, on a trip to somewhere in South America, he met this kid who told him a story about himself. The technique is really good. As you'll see, like in the foreground, there's water on his face. The texture is so realistic, but then sort of in the back, you have these washed out colors, almost a sort of fantasy feel. The whole of the picture is very balanced, and you still get that sense of harmony and warm light from it. The artist, he was really moved by the child's spirit. The child's from the slums, and so he looks around and he sees people who either get into drugs or they get into gangs, and he doesn't want that for himself. So he was telling this artist about how he's going to make a better life for himself. The immense spirit and determination that the kid had really stuck with the guy, so that's why he painted such a large portrait of the child.
Many of us have been child fighters. But this little kid learned to defend himself in his own way. It's a great sacrifice that way. And so this is another form of strength, another form of endurance. We are capable of much more than we think. These children amaze us.
Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome. Prediabetes does. One in 3 adults has prediabetes, and you could be one of them. There are usually no signs for prediabetes, so it's important to understand your risk. With early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. And you can change the outcome. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test today. Go to doihaveprediabetes.org.
we're in the nation's capital asking the important questions so that you're in the know. Join us daily, Monday through Friday, on the Capitol Report on NTD News.
And now we turn to look at China. After his re-election, Russian President Vladimir Putin vowed to strengthen China-Russia relations in the coming years.
We have lots of coinciding points of interest, both in the economy and in international politics. I am confident that we will be strengthening all of these within the coming years.
On Monday, Putin praised China for its, as it called, success on the world stage, including the Belt and Road Initiative. The infrastructure program is considered by many countries as a tool of the Chinese Communist Party to expand its control worldwide.
Putin also said that Russia recognizes Taiwan as an inseparable part of China. He condemned countries that staged what he called provocations around the island and imposed sanctions on China.
The CCP has never ruled Taiwan, which has democratically elected leaders and its own constitution.
In January and February, the trade between Russia and China grew about 10%. A warning from the Secretary of State Antony Blinken about disinformation around the world. More than 60 countries are voting in national elections this year, increasing the risk of falsehoods online.
This is an extraordinary election year in country after country. But citizens and candidates will face a flood of falsehoods that suffocate serious civic debate.
He said this at a democracy summit in Seoul today.
Blinken repeated that China and Russia are often behind disinformation campaigns globally. For example, here's what he said China is doing.
Buying cable TV platforms in Africa and excluding international news channels from subscription packages. Or using local subsidiaries to surreptitiously purchase media companies in Southeast Asia, which then run heavily pro-PRC news.
The main agenda of the summit is how to use technology to promote democracy and human rights, as well as counter online threats.
South Korea also invited Taiwan to participate. China protested.
And now we have some short headlines from Sweden, Germany, and other European countries. The European Union's 27 foreign ministers gathered in Brussels today to discuss sanctions on both Hamas and Israeli settlers in the West Bank.
The foreign minister of Cyprus said a second shipment of aid for the enclave was ready to leave the country. Israel denies obstructing deliveries into Gaza and has blamed failures on aid agencies.
Israel also accuses Hamas of intercepting and diverting humanitarian assistance. Many at the meeting raised concerns about the worsening humanitarian situation in Gaza.
I will ask for a dialogue with Israel based on that Council of Association, precisely on these issues, on the respect of the humanitarian international law and the respect of human rights in Gaza. What we're going is to bring everyone to the table of peace. So I will listen to what...
The NATO flag was raised outside the Swedish parliament on Monday in a ceremony marking its accession to the alliance. Sweden officially joined NATO on March 7th, with 2 years after Russia invaded Ukraine.
The Scandinavian nation ultimately concluded that the alliance was its best safety guarantee. The flag went up alongside the Swedish and European Union flags.
For NATO, Sweden and Finland are the most significant additions to the alliance in decades. Their membership is also a blow for Russian President Vladimir Putin.
The Russian leader has long sought to prevent any further strengthening of the alliance. NATO's Article 5 states that an attack on one member is regarded as an attack on all.
Our NATO membership is not aimed against anyone. It also doesn't change the basics or aims for our foreign and defense policies. The preservation of Sweden's freedom and independence continues to be our most important goal.
Police said Polish farmers blocked 2 border crossings with Germany today. They're joining protests against European Union environmental regulations and cheap imports.
Farmers in Poland and across the EU have been calling for changes to the EU's Green Deal. The plan intends to tackle climate change and greatly restricts farmers.
The farmers also want to bring back customs duties on imports of agricultural products from Ukraine. Those duties were waived after Russia's invasion in 2022. The farmers say cheap Ukrainian imports are flooding EU markets, leaving them unable to compete.
A local police spokesperson said that the blockades are scheduled to continue until Wednesday. Polish farmers are planning more protests across the country on Wednesday as well.
And in the Italian Alps, a daring rescue on Saturday saved 3 mountain climbers. The alpinists were stuck in an icy gully at an altitude of 7,500 feet in Piedmont.
In a delicate operation, the fire brigade rescued the 3 mountaineers with the help of a helicopter crew.
Rescuers rappelled off the helicopter and proceeded to climb the mountain using pickaxes.
The mountain climbers were then hoisted up to the helicopter one by one.
And NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg is in Azerbaijan yet today. It's part of his 3-nation tour of the South Caucasus.
Azerbaijan is currently involved in an armed conflict with Armenia over a disputed region. The country's defense minister today thanked NATO for supporting what he called the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan.
Yesterday, the NATO chief met the president of Azerbaijan. Stoltenberg reportedly said that Armenia and Azerbaijan now have an opportunity to achieve enduring peace after years of conflict.
Azerbaijan's president echoed that, saying his country is closer than ever to a peace with Armenia.
A new hope in Brussels there's a new shop in Brussels selling unopened Amazon packages by weight. Customers essentially purchase a lottery ticket to find out what's inside. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on this unusual business.
This shop is called Pile ou Face, French for heads or tails. Customers here can buy unclaimed Amazon packages for about $17 a kilo.
We sell Amazon packages that haven't been delivered or that weren't suitable for customers, so they were returned. We also sell Amazon end-of-stock items, which we sell by the kilo at 16 euros per kilo. People come in, choose their box in the store, and it's a lucky dip.
Customers pick a box among the dozens stored in the shop. Some take them home, while others open them on the spot. Giselle Peters is a bit disappointed. Her package contained an old rotary telephone, but she appreciates the idea behind the shop.
Personally, I think that if we can recover things like that, at least this is all stuff which won't end up in the bin, it can benefit other people. Now I'll try to resell it.
User Stom said smartwatches and smartphones make shoppers the happiest. Others go home with particularly weird items, like toothbrushes for dogs in bulk.
As I often say, people pay to open the box. They open their box, and if it's good inside, all the better. It's even more interesting. If it's not, well, that's the game. It's like playing the lottery.
Pile ou Face has a contract with Amazon in Europe to get unretrieved, returned, and lost packages. For customers, each one is a potential jackpot. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Coming up in college basketball, the NCAA tournament is finally set, but only one team can win it. Dave Martin joins us to discuss who that team might be.
Cherry blossoms put on a show in Washington, D.C. with a historically early bloom, and beloved cherry tree Underdog is passing on its legacy. More shortly here on NTD News Today.
Freedom is not free, and neither is the truth. In order to bring you the facts, our reporters are out there on the front lines getting the true story. Some of them served 10 years of prison in China. We've been censored on social media. Our Hong Kong printing offices were set on fire, and we've been repeatedly attacked by the Chinese Communist Party. But no matter what, we believe that you deserve the truth, and so we'll continue to bring the truth to light. Head on over to getepic.com and try honest journalism that is based in truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
Did you know the government can essentially rob you in plain sight? Former Fed Chair Alan Greenspan warned, deficit spending is simply a scheme for the confiscation of wealth. But he added, gold stands in the way of this insidious process. Birch Gold Group has helped thousands of Americans diversify their IRA or 401k into gold. To get a free info kit from Birch Gold, text PREPARE to 989898. Again, text PREPARE to 989898 right now.
This is it, the culmination of everything our young athlete has worked for these past months. He's filled with determination. You can see it in his face. Is today the day he overcomes? And here we go. There is no defense in the world that will keep him at bay. He's on fire. Nothing can stop him. Watch him as he heads towards the goal. Oh, he's blocked hard. But that doesn't stop him. He's a warrior. He's back up. His eyes are on the goal. He's set up for the shot. He shoots. Goal!
Achieving goals like this is only possible with the monthly support of people just like you.
Please call the number on your screen right now and give your monthly support to Shriners Hospitals for Children so other children can reach their goals too.
If you give just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day, we will send you your very own Love to the Rescue blanket as a reminder of the love you're giving us. Because of monthly support of people like you, nothing is stopping me from achieving my goals.
And here we go. There is no defense in the world that will keep him at bay. He's going left. Oh, he fakes right and continues. Look at those moves. He takes the shot. Goal! Please call or go online now. If operators are busy, call again or go to loveshriners.org to give right away. Your monthly gift helps kids achieve their goals. Goal!
For the day's top headlines and the news you need to know, tune in right here to NTD Evening News.
And now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, the NCAA tournament field, also known as the brackets, have finally been revealed. So which teams are people considered their favorites?
You know, there's a number of tough teams out there. I think Houston, North Carolina, Purdue, UConn, really the 4 number 1 seeds. I think a lot of people think they have a really good shot at doing this, of course. I mean, Carolina was just in the title game 2 years ago. UConn is the defending champions, but no one has repeated, well, I'll say in the last 50 years, it's only twice that a team has repeated. That was Florida and Duke. It's very, very difficult to do. Purdue has that 7'4" center, Zach Edey, who's really tough. Yet Purdue was a 1 seed last year, and somehow they lost in the first round, so I have no idea what to make of them. I don't think they're losing the first round again this year, though. You know, Tennessee and Arizona are also in very tough number 2 seeds. I would say those teams are probably the 6 favorites that odds makers are looking to, but every sports fan knows this tournament is nearly impossible to predict.
Now, okay, so this tournament seems to have a lot of excitement around it. Why do you think that is?
You know, for one thing, it's single elimination. You know, every game is played on a neutral court. They really level the playing field. You know, the NBA, it's best of 7 games, and the team with the better record gets home court advantage. It's completely different. It's actually somewhat even predictable, you might say. But here, essentially every game is like a winner-take-all game 7, and those are always the most exciting. Plus, the neutral court thing really favors those smaller, lesser-known schools. You know, every location for these first 2 rounds is going to have 4 teams there, so that means 4 sets of fans are there watching each game. Now, if you're the favorite, the top seed, the fans of the other 3 schools that are there are probably rooting against your team because they want to see the big-time upset. So it becomes that much harder, I think, for these bigger schools. I mean, it's almost like a road game. Now, that's kind of how you get Purdue losing to Fairleigh Dickinson in the first round like last year, or even 2 years ago when St. Peter's beat Kentucky, made it all the way to the 4th round. So you really never know what you're going to see next.
Yeah, I can see how it's intense. It's like pretty much sudden death. You lose 1 game, you're done.
Sudden death every single game, that's right.
Wow. Now, so baseball season also kicks off this week. What are some of the major storylines going on?
Well, you know, everything Shohei Ohtani does anymore is a storyline, it seems like. I mean, $700 million contract, that's a storyline in and of itself, of course. Now, he won't pitch this year because of off-season surgery on his arm.
He's still very popular. He can still be hitting, though, and he's still on a juggernaut team with the LA Dodgers starting this year. But also there's a storyline happening in New York now as Yankees ace Garrett Cole is going to be resting for a while with a sore elbow. They think rest could heal it. I mean, we'll have to see. Now, this is big because the rest of the Yankees pitching staff has a lot of question marks, really. And the team just swung a major trade for all-star hitter Juan Soto. And to do it, they had to part with 4 young pitchers. So they're not exactly deep right there. I'm surprised they haven't gone out and signed Blake Snell or some other free agent yet. Maybe they're waiting for the asking price to come down, but I think that's going to be a storyline also to watch this season.
All right, Dave Martin, thank you so much for keeping us updated on sports.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for the education.
Now, in health news, on this episode of Strong Mind and Body, we talk about the importance of vitamins A and D. Gina Marie has tips on how to incorporate these vitamins into your diet.
Vitamins A and D are power-packed vitamins essential for our health. You don't have to buy expensive supplements as they are abundant in certain foods. Let's start by looking at the roles vitamins A and D play in our health, then we'll look at some food options. So let's start with vitamin A. Vitamin A maintains the integrity and function of the skin. It's essential for the lining of the respiratory tract, gut, and bladder. It supports the daily replacement of skin cells, it's vital for vision and inner ear function, and it also helps to maintain a healthy immune system. One of the main consequences of vitamin A deficiency is an increased risk of severe infection. Infection increases the body's demand for vitamin A, and so the deficiency gets worse. Children can therefore become involved in a vicious cycle of deficiency and infection. This is why vitamin A deficiency is an important cause of child mortality. Next, let's look at vitamin D. Your body must have vitamin D to absorb calcium and promote bone growth. Too little vitamin D results in soft bones in children and fragile bones in adults. Vitamin D deficiency has now been linked to breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer, heart disease, depression, and weight gain. Let's look at 7 foods rich in vitamin A and D. These foods were compiled by the Western A Price Foundation. They contain a combo of both A and D. If you adhere to these foods, you will get plenty of these 2 vital nutrients. So number 1 is natural cod liver oil. Of course, you want it unheated. Number 2, poultry liver. Number 3, pastured egg yolks. Number 4, pastured raw butter. Number 5, aged raw cheese from pastured milk. Number 6, beef liver cooked in pastured lard. And number 7, fish eggs and shellfish. It's best to get these precious foods from organic farmers and suppliers so you can be sure of their high quality. And in closing, if you are interested in a whole food diet, start by looking into the principles of the Western A Price Foundation.
Chicago celebrated its world-famous St. Patrick's Day celebration on Saturday. The event featured the Windy City's river gleaming in a vibrant shade of emerald. It's a tradition dating back to 1962. The Chicago Plumbers Union infuses the river with 50 pounds of green dye. It covers a quarter-mile stretch with a vivid algae-like color.
The Plumbers Union said the dye would maintain its brilliant hue for about 5 hours. The union reassured the public the environmentally friendly dye would not harm wildlife.
And Manhattan's Fifth Avenue turned green on Saturday. Large crowds decked out in festive emerald attire turned out to cheer on the thousands of marchers in the St. Patrick's Day parade.
Marching bands, performers, and politicians all walked the parade route to celebrate Irish heritage, along with members of the New York City Fire and Police departments.
Sightseers lined the streets of Manhattan to celebrate all things Irish, drawing visitors from around the U.S. and internationally.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul, New York City Mayor Eric Adams, and Attorney General Letitia James marched in the parade.
And Boston also marked the holiday yesterday with an extra special celebration. This year's event was the bicentennial of a parade first held in 1824.
Bagpipes set the traditional mood as the sounds of the unique instruments wafted over the crowd, while those who prefer more modern music also had something to enjoy.
Irish flags were waved proudly in the crowd, and a leprechaun mascot greeted the parade goers.
St. Patrick's Day commemorates Ireland's patron saint. It was popularized largely by Irish Catholic immigrants.
Kansas City also held a St. Patrick's Day parade on Sunday. A marching band of drummers provided the music with their fast and steady beats, while others rode atop a truck yelling and smiling and engaging onlookers.
Along the route, a man driving a Corvette stopped long enough to shake the hand of a police officer, and several others did too. One float was pulled by a truck with a sign on the front that read, "Kansas City Strong."
It was just last month that a deadly shooting occurred at the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs celebration. A Kansas City Police Department spokesperson said 400 officers were on the scene of yesterday's parade.
Cherry blossoms have already reached their peak bloom in Washington, D.C. The National Park Service wrote on X that the blossoms are putting on a splendid spring spectacle.
The early bloom is close to the earliest on record. It's also about a week earlier than the National Park Service's own prediction.
The sea of pale pink and white blossoms around the tidal basin in D.C. have come to symbolize the natural beauty of the capital city.
The famous cherry trees were a gift from Japan in 1912. They signal the beginning of spring with an explosion of life and color. One old cherry blossom tree is passing on its legacy. Stumpy is an old tree that seems to just keep on fighting despite the tough odds. It sits in a muddy, flooded area and has pretty much been reduced to just a stump.
The National Park Service says Stumpy and around 140 other cherry trees nearby will be cut down. It's part of a project to repair the tidal basin and West Potomac seawalls.
But there is a silver lining. Cuttings from Stumpy will be used to grow new genetic matches to help replant the tidal basin banks after the seawall project is finished.
And the rest of Stumpy will be turned into mulch to be used on the National Mall.
And one senior dog in Texas has waited years to find his forever home, and his wish was finally granted. Meet Velcro, formerly known as Beluga. The 10-year-old Carolina dog mix has special needs, including being partially blind and deaf, and has mobility issues.
He arrived at the Austin Pets Alive shelter in 2022 and had spent over 700 days there. Then in February, 74-year-old Jeanette walked in and felt the dog was meant for her after spending time with him.
She brought him home under foster care with the intention of adopting. Jeanette says while Velcro has since bloomed, while acting like a calm old gentleman.
Jeanette encourages others to not overlook special needs and senior dogs because they too deserve love.
What a sweet story. That's all for today's news.
Thank you for tuning in.
For round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app.
And be sure to stick around for NTD Newsroom at 3 p.m. Eastern. We'll cover more stories from the U.S. and around the world.